Hello. So about a year ago, I filmed a video just over there, and I had a little knife in front of me. I think the video's name is Preparing the Next Generation. And this year, I am preparing the next generation, specifically my preteen daughter. She is nearing that age where she needs to understand how the human body functions in a much more detailed, specific way for adults. I'm going to use some code terms here so I don't trigger anything with this video, but you know what I'm talking about, the talk, the birds and the bees, that kind of thing. You know, and so my wife and I, we were praying about how to handle this conversation, and we started off last year. I spent time with my son and then brought him in with my wife and I together, and tried to facilitate more conversation, and that seemed to go well. So this time my wife took my daughter on a special trip and took some resources with her and just kind of broached the topic and explained some of the mechanics of things. And I think they had a great time, just a mother-daughter bonding time, bonding over what it means to grow into adult womanhood and preparing my daughter for that. But then as she came back, I told my wife, I said, I'd like to have some one-on-one time with my daughter as well, just to go over some of those things I want to give her the male perspective on some of that. And as a caring, concerned father, what I really want her to know about the male perspective and how to be on guard, because, and I know what I'm about to say is very controversial. Men and women are equal in standing before God, but men and women are created differently. We have different parts. We have different minds that work differently. We have different chromosomes. We have different DNA. I can't believe that that's controversial to say, but it is. It is the truth. It is scientific truth. They just won't acknowledge it. They won't admit it in the public sphere, so to speak. There is key important differences between men and women. And we are designed by God to fit together, all right? Physically, emotionally, and I would even go so far as to say spiritually as well. And just a little side note challenge, if you want to better your marriage, pray together. Get in a room and pray together. Pray for each other out loud so you can hear each other's prayers, but then also pray together for the needs, and hearing the other person's heart coming out in prayer bonds you to that person in a very deep and meaningful way. In fact, I would even go so far as to say, be careful, men, praying with women who are not your wives, especially on a one-on-one kind of basis. And likewise, women praying with other men, because that intimate bonding of the heart and even the soul is a very crucial and important thing. And that is something I really wanted to drive home with my daughter as well. She had just been exposed to the birds and the bees conversation, but I wanted her to know that intimacy is much deeper than that. And I stressed this with my son as well last year, but especially with my daughter, I wanted to challenge her to really guard her heart. Yes, and also, of course, guard her body, but that her heart and her soul is her greatest treasure that she can give to another person, and that she needs to be seeking one day, hopefully not anytime soon, but one day, a man who values her for her heart and soul, not just her physical outward beauty. So let me also say that like last year, I gifted my daughter a knife. I chose the Buck 117. It's a very sleek, precise little knife. My daughter took her first little buck this year during deer season, and so it's a buck knife. There's also a family connection there because my father and my grandfather all have carried bucks their whole life and used bucks for hunting and that kind of thing. So there's that family lineage aspect passing this down. This is a brand new knife. I think I bought it off of Amazon for about $75. It's a USA made knife. That's one of my criteria when I get a knife for one of my children. I think this knife kind of portrays my daughter's characteristics and personality very well. Just very sleek and appealing and precise. She has a very sharp wit, my daughter. You know, and so as I gifted her this knife, oh, I don't know if you could hear that. I had a deer sneaking up on me. Heard me talking about buck knives and didn't like it. But when I gave her this knife, you know, I told her, look, you know, you've seen how a knife like this is used to skin a deer. You've seen how knives like this can be used to different bushcraft tasks. And you know, I've been teaching my daughter some of those things as well. I said, however, there's also a level of this knife specifically. She has a little Swiss Army knife, but this knife is big enough that you could do some damage to somebody. It can be used as a defensive or offensive weapon. And as I gave my daughter this, I told her, I said, look, you have to protect yourself from wicked and evil people. And you have to be very careful and be on guard that there are wicked and evil men specifically that I'm talking about in the world that are seeking young women, young beautiful women, and sometimes they manipulate them, and sometimes they prey upon them, and women need to be aware of that. And my daughter, I want her to be prepared to make sure she's has accountability and protection, you know, even when she's getting to know a young man who she thinks is sweet and kind, you know, to always be concerned about having an escape route, you know, always making sure that there's accountability, there's someone that can help her if needed, until she builds up that level of trust with a young man that he's safe. And you know, I expressed to her, used a turkey hunting analogy about, she actually hasn't been turkey hunting, but I told her a story recently about some jakes that bum rushed a decoy and jumped on the decoy. And she's like, this is starting to make sense. I said, yeah. I said, that's kind of how a lot of men are, especially teenage boys, when it comes to seeing a pretty woman. They go a little crazy, and they don't use the best judgment in the world. And I said, it's up to you as a young woman to use some good godly wisdom and judgment and protect yourself from young men who just, in some ways, just want one thing. And unfortunately, it's not their heart. It's not the girl's heart. It's her body. And I told her she needs to be prayerfully looking one day for a young man who wants her heart, that puts her needs first, that is sacrificial towards her, that loves her like Jesus loves her. Ultimately, that's the biblical standard, you know. And I am sharing this. I know that mostly my audience is probably men, and I just want to challenge you to, you know, be the man that you want your daughter to marry. Now, maybe you don't have a daughter. Find a father figure that you admire that has a daughter, and talk to him. If you're struggling in some areas about you know, how you in your marriage and how you look at or think about other women, I want to challenge you to you know, think through that method, that lens, so to speak. And it's biblical. You know, the Apostle Paul tells Timothy, you know, think of younger women as sisters and older women as mothers. You know, and don't think of them as objects to be pursued, something to fulfill or satisfy an appetite. Now, this is honestly my second take of this video. My first take, I got a little heated. It was very close to that conversation. And, you know, giving my daughter something like this, you know, I know the potential for wickedness that's in my own heart because of the sins that I've struggled with in my life, the things that I've had to repent of and surrender to God and ask for God's healing and God's growth and maturing in my life, especially in that area of how I look at women, how I treat women, specifically, you know, even my wife, and growing and maturing in our marriage. And, you know, so my first take of this video, I was coming at the men hard, okay, and just like, stop being a monster. Now, I've kind of mellowed a little bit because I know that our culture is very anti-men. The overarching pop culture is anti-men. And then there's a countercultural push that I think is honestly toxic masculinity. And it's sometimes termed that. There is an extreme. There is an unhealthy extreme. You know, and I don't want to name names or anything like that, but, you know, there are some figures out there that are on the more quote-unquote conservative side of the spectrum that are, I think, are doing damage to what true biblical masculinity is supposed to be. We are supposed to serve our wives. We are supposed to serve and love and honor and protect all the women in our lives. You know, a lot of times, even in the Christian circles, we'll be reading in Ephesians chapter 5 about, you know, women submit. But just a few verses before, in Ephesians chapter 4, it says, submit ye to one another. That's the basis. As a Christian brother or sister, we're supposed to submit to one another out of love. The way that that submission works in the marriage then is the wife is supposed to honor and respect and, yes, in some ways obey her husband, but the husband is supposed to sacrifice his very life for his wife. It's supposed to be putting her first in everything. That's more than just opening the door, carrying in the groceries. Men, grow up. Learn how to change diapers. Men, grow up and learn how to do your own laundry. Men, you need to learn and know how to cook, not just for yourself, but also for your family, okay? You don't have to be a 5-star chef, okay? But you need to at least know how to love and care for your wife, because there will come a day when you will need to prepare food for her. And you might not be able to call, you know, McDonald's or whatever DoorDash thing you want to use. You need to know how to provide for your family and specifically the women in your lives, and not just sit back in your lazy boy recliner with the TV on expecting her to serve you hand and foot. Just because that's how your mommy and daddy did it years and years ago in a previous generation does not mean that that was specifically how God wanted the family to operate. Now, I have a lot of respect for former generations, but I also have experienced and seen how some of these poor mentalities, poor attitudes toward women have been kind of hidden, even in some of the conservative movements, and passed down to other generations. Men, when you go in the bedroom with your wife, you need to put her needs first. Trust me, it will mean a whole lot more. The intimacy will be so much deeper if you put her needs first. And I'm talking about all of her needs. I'm talking about the emotional needs. Have you listened to her talk? Have you listened responsively? That's something hard, I know. I get it. But we got to work at it. We got to show our wives that we do care about them. We care about their day. We care about their emotions, their stress. We care about their hearts. Are you putting her needs first in the bed? Are you putting her needs first in the house? Are there things that you can do to help? Pick up your own socks and make sure they land in the hamper, right? Nobody's perfect. We all need to work on some of these things. Going back to the knife for just a minute, you know, this little Buck 117, we haven't gotten a chance to use it yet. And because she is a minor, I will maintain control of this until she is, you know, doing an activity like hunting or something where she needs this, but ultimately this is hers. And you've seen this perhaps in other videos, and I think she liked and appreciated this, that her Buck 117 It's just a little smaller version of the very classic, iconic Buck 119. And I have some modifications I've done to mine. And told her if she wanted to, in the future, we can do some modifications. I think she wants a certain color paracord added to hers. And I told her we'd make a Kydex sheath. That might be a video someday of her and I making a sheath for her new knife. So I just want to also challenge, the men who are in the audience watching this, that, talking about these topics with your daughter, your granddaughter, can be difficult. I get it. It can make you feel uncomfortable. It can make them feel uncomfortable. You need to be careful, how you approach these topics. Make sure that it's a safe environment, safe conversation place. Make sure that the relationship is where you can bring up some of these uncomfortable topics and be safe to talk about. And even having a mother or a grandmother figure in the room when you have the conversation, but have the conversation. Let them know that you care about them. And also, the metaphor that I use specifically with my son, I said, look, this knife is a tool. It can be used for good things. It can also be used for harmful things. Your body is a tool. And I said that to my son, and I said that to my daughter. Your body is a tool given to you by God, and it has very beneficial purposes, but you can bring a lot of harm to yourself and to others if you use it in the wrong ways and in the wrong context. That is I believe it's a powerful metaphor. It seemed to really connect with my children. I just want to challenge you to consider making that connection with the young men and the young women that are in your lives, and prepare that next generation for the world. I will also add, with my son, I was challenging him, kind of really honed in on guarding his eyes and what he sees, what he looks at, what he takes in. And of course, we're very careful with his online usage, and if any. And as he grows and matures, we'll be very careful what access we give him to a world that is trying to draw him in using pornography into very addictive and sinful behavior. Now, that's not usually an issue that young women face. Some do, but young women often struggle with body image. And so body image, sometimes they feel like they have to show more of their body in order to have a better image of themselves. And so I did hone in on that with my daughter. And I explained to her how making sure that her body is properly clothed, properly covered. We're not trying, I told her there's a spectrum. You can be completely covered, you can be hardly covered at all. And I said, now look, you have a responsibility before God to protect yourself and to protect the hearts of other people as well. I said, a young man's looking at you, and the way you're dressed, that he's stumbling into lust. Well, you bear some responsibility for that. And if he's acting really crazy around you and you're not dressed really well, it's kind of like the turkey in the decoy scenario, right? You need to put some clothes on. And I think my daughter understood at least a little bit of that. And I know that's going to be, I told her, I said, this conversation's not over. I said, you and I will probably butt heads on your wardrobe. I said, but please know that whenever I correct your wardrobe as your father while you're living in my house, and I say, let's work on that, it's out of love for her and wanting to protect her. And I sure hope she heard me and understood that message. And men, don't be afraid, but also, when you correct those kinds of things, do it in love. Do it carefully, and even ask, why do you feel like you need to wear that? You don't need to, wear that low-cut top or whatever to be beautiful. And understanding that there is a line. It's different for a lot of different people, but we need to encourage our daughters to find that line and stick with that line. We need to encourage our sons to find the line of how they view other women and appreciate beauty, but then also at the same time that it doesn't turn into ungodly lust and objectifying women. So Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. You know, I hope for the best in my children's lives and in their relationships. Um, I can't believe that I'm already, you know, in that time where my children are teenagers and may already have crushes and all that kind of stuff. And I told both my kids, I said, when you have crushes, don't be ashamed about it, you know. And I said, I want to meet your crush. If they're ready to be serious with you, then they need to be serious enough to meet the parents, and you know, at least have the broader conversations of, you know, if you're going to be exclusive with my son or with my daughter, you know, let's have some healthy parameters, and let's work together as a team to make sure that we set a strong foundation for the future. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Thanks for sticking with me. Take care.